AVS
This is
Media
Larry
Demo.
Namer, founder of E! Entertainment Television, and this is my startup story.
Every wildfire began with a spark. Every superhero has an origin story. And every single startup has a moment that they point to as their
AVS
beginning.
Media
And
Demo.
every founder has a purpose that drove them in the midst of all obstacles. That is the startup story. The startup story would not be possible if it wasn't for the support of our sponsor, MovoCash. Move money like a miracle with MovoCash,
AVS Media
the free money
Demo.
app that kicks cash. Download MovoCash app on iTunes or Google Play today, and you'll get your slick new Movo card in the mail. You are no longer dependent upon digital currency alone, but you'll have a card that allows you to purchase at POS stations, restaurants,
AVS
buy
Media
online,
Demo.
anywhere that you want to use your money. No credit check, no credit impact, quick direct deposit, FDIC insured, and free to register and activate. Support our sponsor, MovoCash. Visit movo.cash or thestartupstory.co/MovoCash.
AVS Media Demo.
Your age will probably determine what shows come to mind when you think of E! Entertainment Television. If you are 35 years or older, like myself, you will probably think of the hilarious show Talk
AVS
Soup with
Media
Greg Kinnear
Demo.
or Joel McHale, a television show that mocked, well, other television shows. If you're under the age of 30, you might think of Keeping Up with the Kardashians. Either way, E! Entertainment Television has a very significant audience draw across the
AVS
cable
Media
platforms.
Demo.
This episode of The Startup Story features Larry Namer, the founder of E! Entertainment Television. Now, for the record, Larry had nothing to do with the Kardashian phenomenon that has taken over pop culture today. He did, however, have everything
AVS
to do
Media
with the building
Demo.
of a media network in the mid-1980s that eventually sold for approximately $3 billion in 2007. At first glance, you might be thinking, cable was so new in the mid-80s, it's just a matter of capitalizing on time and history.
AVS Media
Well,
Demo.
there may be some validity to that thinking. E!'s startup story is about Larry's conviction that there was no way he was going to let E! fail. In this episode, you will learn how Larry maneuvered the early days of E! with only $60 remaining in his bank account.
AVS
You'll learn how
Media
he built
Demo.
his company with only raising 3% of the money he tried 3 years to raise. You'll also hear how he learned to constantly adapt his business to ensure success regardless of the external circumstances he faced. Wherever you are at in your
AVS Media
entrepreneurial journey,
Demo.
Larry's story will speak to you directly and provide you with a fresh perspective to take into your endeavors. If you don't believe me, let me just start by saying that Larry's story does not begin on the glamorous side of Hollywood. In fact, Larry's startup
AVS
story
Media
begins in
Demo.
the sewers of Manhattan, New York.
Somebody I knew, his dad was a electrician in New York, and said, oh, my father, he's part of the electricians union. They just organized this thing called cable
AVS
television.
Media
I'm not
Demo.
quite sure what it is, but we could probably get you an interview. So I did get an interview at a company called Sterling Manhattan, the precursor to Manhattan Cable, which was the precursor to Time Inc. Cable. So I got a job there. I think I lied.
AVS
I think
Media
I put down
Demo.
that I had no education because I needed the job. So they gave me a job being an assistant splicer underground, which meant I worked in the sewers of Manhattan.
Oh, my
Where I
goodness.
would literally 8:30 in the morning, I would go down the sewer and I'd splice cables
AVS Media
together. And
Demo.
for what eventually became the cable system that powered all of Manhattan. But it was a great time to be there. The company, while nobody knew it or what it was at the beginning, Time Inc. came in a year after I joined, and they bought the
AVS
company.
Media
So
Demo.
Time Inc. at that point was a magazine company.
Okay.
And it was very interesting because you had all these, the Yale and the Harvard guys sitting up on 6th Avenue, and a lot of them trying to figure out what it is those guys in the sewers do. And then eventually
AVS
somebody in
Media
Human
Demo.
Resources said, wait a second, there's a guy with an economics degree that does that. So I kind of became the de facto translator
Okay.
between the tech guys
Yeah.
who very rarely even had a high school diploma. and
AVS Media
Harvard,
Demo.
Yale's
Yeah.
and stuff like that. So it was a great time to be there because Time Inc. decided that over 10 years, and this is kind of like 71 to 81,
Okay.
that they were going to migrate their company from being a printing company to
AVS
becoming a
Media
media
Demo.
company.
Oh, interesting.
And actually, the study that was done jointly with IBM. which IBM read the study and poo-pooed it and said, ridiculous. But Time Inc. decided they were going to make that transformation. And it was a great time because it was
AVS Media
the beginning
demo.
of big city cable systems. While I was there, we built Manhattan, which was the first underground big city system that was really dependent more on programming. Where, the rural systems were all on
AVS
telephone
Media
poles to
demo.
bring people television where they never had it before. And then programming. In 1973, a guy named Jerry Levin came in there and who was there, but he kind of rose and said, I heard about these things called satellites. I think we're going to start
AVS
putting movies
Media
on them. And
demo.
we were going, really, Jerry, what's a satellite? And, so that was the beginning of HBO, and then we did Cinemax. And so a lot of things came out of that group in that 10 years, a lot of innovation. So it was a great place to be because I got to do stuff really young.
AVS Media
That
demo.
most people in the staid Time Inc. family didn't get to do until they were in their 50s.
So you were a part of the early days of HBO.
Yeah, I was there. I was part of what was known as the Time Inc. Video Group.
Okay.
And we all helped each other. So I was on the
AVS
cable
Media
operations
demo.
side.
Okay.
But HBO at one point was in the same offices and stuff. It was kind of incubated there. And we crossed over and did a lot of stuff. And it was kind of there where I started becoming a little bit fascinated in the programming side because I would
AVS
see all this
Media
exciting
demo.
stuff. And I go, gee, that's a lot more interesting than working with the rats in the sewers and stuff like that.
So
But
while you were in the sewers, though, what were you thinking your career? Because I'm assuming you didn't have any entrepreneurial endeavors while you're in the sewers, right? Was your mindset
AVS
just
Media
kind of climb the
demo.
ranks, or what were you thinking in the sewers?
my mindset, my mindset was just, this is a nice temp job. I can't wait to get out of here. But then, I think when Time Inc. came in and I started to say, hey, wait a second, this is
AVS
got
Media
possibilities
demo.
here and this could be exciting and this could be a big company. It really was focused much more on being able to climb the ranks. And I did climb rather quickly there. I mean, I think I was 23 when I was on the union side. I think I was
AVS Media
23 when they
demo.
put me as the vice chairman of the division of the union simply because I knew how to read. I could actually read contracts and
Okay.
stuff like
Yeah.
that. And so I represented, literally thousands of cable workers in the union thing, which was just
AVS
bizarre.
Media
But then the
demo.
management guys wanted me to move over to management, which at first I refused, but then they lured me over. I saw the opportunity to rise. I think at that point, my aspiration was to maybe one day become a vice president of the company. and
AVS
stuff.
Media
Then after,
demo.
kind of after that, I look back and I go, really? I once wanted to be that? Because I think at some point I kind of passed that.
Yeah. Do you think, just to kind of stay in that moment for a minute there when you had aspirations of being a VP, do you think a lot of
AVS
that
Media
mindset
demo.
was related to your upbringing? Your parents had stable jobs. Were they first generation U.S.? your
Yeah,
parents?
they
Okay.
were first. Yeah, it was definitely that. I mean, my family's aspiration for me was get a civil service job and be
AVS
able to
Media
retire with a
demo.
pension and
Yeah.
stuff like that. So there was no thoughts of being an entrepreneur
Yeah.
whatsoever. It was just rising up in the corporate ranks that they were supportive of that. They were thinking
course.
you should work for the city and you're more
AVS
guaranteed.
Media demo.
What's this cable thing and how do we know it'll be around tomorrow? But I kind of knew that this cable thing was not going away and it was
Yeah.
going to be big and stuff. So I just stuck with it for 10 years.
So when you were at Time and you're getting
AVS
this
Media
experience with
demo.
HBO, if I'm not mistaken, you actually, on the HBO side, you were integral in the expansion of that whole business unit, weren't you?
I eventually, and again, this is kind of fun because I was really young when I got to do
AVS
all this
Media
stuff.
demo.
I was 25. They made me the director of operations.
Oh, my goodness.
Which I had like 300 and some odd people, a lot of technical people, engineers and like real engineers
Yeah.
and stuff reporting to me and, then having to go read
AVS
books to find
Media
out what the
demo.
people who work for me do, which I did. I just
Yeah.
started reading books And then they made me the head of corporate development, which was figuring out businesses that we could build on the back of the cable system that were
AVS Media
non-entertainment.
Demo.
So
Okay.
even way back then, I was doing remote data things. We were running special cables throughout Manhattan so that a bank uptown could talk to a bank downtown. Their computers could talk to each other.
Oh, so because you had the infrastructure, you were
AVS
you were
Media
part of
Demo.
the driving force for monetizing that infrastructure.
That was exactly it. And,
Oh, wow.
and over a short period of time. So we were saying, banks could talk to each other on, at that point, with T1 circuits, which were, unheard of.
AVS
Back in
Media Demo.
79. And very quickly, it actually became the number one source of profits for the cable system because the margins were much, much bigger. I mean, you charge somebody $12 for a cable hookup, but you could charge a bank
AVS Media
$1,200 for the hooking up
Yeah.
one computer to the other on essentially the same kind of bandwidth. So it was a much, much more efficient use of it. It was basically all about finding efficient uses
Yeah.
of bandwidth.
Yeah. So as you're with time, you're climbing the ranks. You're doing
AVS
incredible
Media
things.
Demo.
Now looking back, a part of the early days of some incredible opportunities. When did the ideas start percolating about doing something on your own?
What happened was I hit the 10-year, is where you qualify for the
AVS
pension. You're 30
Media
years
Demo.
old. You go, wait a second. It was kind of then I'm going, really? 30 years old and I'm qualifying for a pension? I said, I'm not sure this is where I'm supposed to be. But I was a true New Yorker. I'd never thought of, I moved to Manhattan, which was the
AVS Media
aspiration of every
Demo.
kid from Brooklyn at that point. But then somebody called me to recruit me to come to a cable system in Los Angeles. But it actually wasn't a cable system. It was a company that won the cable franchise, and nothing was built here. So basically, all they did was
AVS
they had a
Media
piece of paper
Demo.
from the city of LA saying you now have the right to build the San Fernando Valley. They had a bank commitment from Toronto Dominion, and they needed somebody to come and build it. But while there were cable systems all around the country, the
AVS
city of Los
Media
Angeles,
Demo.
when they wrote the franchise, insisted that the cables go underground, not on telephone poles. So this company had to find someone who knew how to build underground. Well, at that point, only Manhattan Cable
Yeah,
was built, and I
yeah.
was the only one who knew how to build underground. I got called. I first
AVS
refused,
Media
I
Demo.
think 2 or 3 times. I said, listen, I'm a New Yorker. I'm not moving to California. But then they convinced me to come out for a weekend and pitch me and stuff like that. And they said, well, what would it take for you to move here? And I named
AVS
like
Media
4 times
Demo.
what I was making in New York. And they said I was out of my mind. And I said, yes, you're probably right. I said, but your question was, what would it take? And I told you what it would take. I said, I'm not looking to make a lateral move and stuff. I'm really fine in New York. And I got a great new
AVS
apartment
Media
in
Demo.
the city. And I went back to New York, and it was like one of those winter days. There was snow on the ground, and it was like second day. And second day snow in New York is black. It's not white. And I'm standing there wearing my suit.
AVS
on the lawn,
Media
walking to
Demo.
work, and cab goes by and splashes like black, wet, cold slush all over me. And I just said, really? Did I really refuse that job? Anyway, like 2 days later, the guy called again and said, listen, what you asked for is outrageous,
AVS
but
Media
okay.
Demo.
And I was
That's
like,
awesome.
really?
I love that.
And he said, yeah. He goes, how fast could you be here? I said, well, 2 weeks, I guess. And I literally walked in, quit that day, packed up my stuff, and came out to California to build what's
AVS
now
Media
Valley
Demo.
Cable, which was the first 61-channel two-way cable system ever built. And for me, it was a great opportunity because now I moved totally out of the operations side. And then I now had finance and marketing and programming. I had literally I was the general
AVS
manager, so
Media
everything
Demo.
reported to me. So I got fascinated with all the other stuff and stuff. And I kept thinking that, hey, maybe there should be this, maybe there should be that. Then what happened was the company that I had worked for decided to sell out and move
AVS
back
Media
to
Demo.
Canada. And I said, I didn't move from New York to LA to go to Toronto. And so I had left there. A friend of mine and I were just kicking around. Now, that was kind of the point where I said, you know
AVS
what?
Media
Maybe it's
Demo.
time I did this for myself.
And how old were you at this time?
32 or 3.
32, 33. Lots of experience from the sewers up through management at Time, now building the entire cable system in the Valley. and lots of
AVS
experience
Media
there.
Demo.
And now you're 32-ish.
So a friend of mine and I, we just kept kicking around ideas, said, I could go work for another cable system, but that's not really what I want to do. And my friend was in the real estate business, and he said, I didn't really want to be in the real estate business. I
AVS
always wanted to be in
Media Demo.
entertainment. So we just said, okay, let's think of something kind of interesting to do. So we kept kicking around stuff. And it was, not long after things like MTV started and whatever, and just started reading articles and studying the entertainment
AVS
business.
Media Demo.
Somebody did a speech that we went and listened to talking about the incredibly high cost of advertising motion pictures. And, we're talking to each other, they go, yeah, but they're doing things kind of ass backwards. The most efficient marketing vehicle you have for a movie is the trailer.
AVS Media Demo.
But you only see the trailer when you're in the movie. I said, but you're already there.
Yeah.
So wouldn't it be good if you found a way to bring the trailer into people's homes where that could actually influence them on which movie to go? So when we kept trying to play with the
AVS
thing, we said, wait
Media
a second,
Demo.
this is MTV of the movies. With MTV, people would turn to the green screen and say, and now Madonna has a new video. We said, why can't we have a host there going, and Schwarzenegger has a new film, and basically take
AVS
the low
Media
cost
Demo.
or the efficiencies of doing just the host stand-ups and putting them against, the best 2 minutes of a $50 million movie or $100 million movie. We didn't have to make the movie. We just had to do the cheap
Yeah,
stand-ups.
yeah.
So that's kind of how we started.
AVS
we originally
Media
called it
Demo.
Movie Time. But we did find an innovative technology then. It was the technology that was being used for the Weather Channel,
Okay.
where the Weather Channel is a national video feed. So the video that everybody saw was the same. But in each different city, there was
AVS
a
Media
little
Demo.
ticker that ran on the bottom that would tell them what the local weather forecast was. So that you would see it differently in Santa Barbara than I would see it in New York or whatever. So we said, gee, wouldn't that be interesting if we could not only show the trailers,
AVS
but
Media
run the
Demo.
local movie theater times?
Oh, interesting. Okay.
So saying
Yeah.
instead of weather, it's movie times.
Yeah.
So that's the way we started. We wrote up a business plan for movie time. We thought it was such a great idea, and people would read it and they go, well,
AVS
yeah, it's an
Media
interesting
Demo.
idea, but you're not Rupert Murdoch or Ted Turner. You don't just go out and start TV networks.
Actually, let's pause on that for a second, because let's set the context for what you were trying to do, right? I mean, I heard an interview with Michael Dubin, the founder
AVS
of Dollar Shave
Media
Club,
Demo.
and when he started, he was entering a market that Gillette had 72% market share. From all appearances, early stages, he was crazy for trying to do that. So, who were the big players in the period that you were starting at Movie
AVS
Time to
Media
become
Demo.
But-
Well, there was, John Malone, who had TCI and then Liberty,
Okay.
then became Liberty. There was Rupert Murdoch, who, of course, there was Time Inc. Then there was Paramount, Disney.
So at that time, the studios
AVS
as well
Media
had their
Demo.
own cable networks.
A lot of studios had their own cable networks.
So was MTV the first independent?
No, MTV was not independent. MTV was Viacom.
From the early days, they were Viacom.
Yeah,
Oh,
from
I
the
thought
very
they
early-
started.
AVS
with-
Media
No,
Demo.
they started out as as in a big company, and they had
Okay.
lots of resources and stuff like that. But the breakthrough guys were basically BET, Bob Johnson, Discovery,
Okay.
and us.
Wow.
AVS
so you were very
Media
early
Demo.
stage on
Yeah.
independence. Oh, that's incredible.
Yeah, we were, and people just said you can't do it and it's impossible and stuff like that. But I think it was my background in Time Inc. where I knew who I was going up against. I mean, I worked with them and for them for years.
AVS Media Demo.
I said, I can tackle that.
What was it about the opportunity that was so appealing that it was worth the obstacles that were in front of you?
Number one, I wanted to stay in LA, so I wanted to find something that I could do here.
AVS
Number
Media
two, I
Demo.
became fascinated with the entertainment business and some of the incredible inefficiencies that I saw of it. I mean, the movie trailer thing being the same thing.
Yeah.
Is like the only time I see a good marketing for a movie is when I'm already in the movie. I said, that's
AVS
kind of
Media
backwards.
Demo.
But the more we looked at it, we saw the unbelievable opportunity. Everybody used this analogy saying cable TV is like an electronic newspaper. It's CNN is the headline, MTV is the music
AVS
section,
Media
ESPN
Demo.
is the sports section. But if you really looked at the numbers for let's say the Sunday paper, the second most read section in any paper was the entertainment section. And we said, wait a second, that's the only thing that's really missing.
wow.
From the
AVS
picture.
Media Demo.
And so we went out saying we're going to create the video version of the entertainment section of a newspaper, and that's really where we saw the upside there is to become that important.
So you're at this time when you're
AVS Media
pitching
Demo.
Movie Time at the time when you're pitching Movie Time. Were you still working at Valley Cable? Or
No, they had already moved back.
Got it, okay.
So I was now out, and Alan and I went around, and we always thought it was a good idea. But I think I was down to
AVS Media Demo.
like $60 in the bank or something like that. And so I actually started
Yeah.
to get worried.
Yeah.
Saying, gee, maybe I was wrong here. Maybe I really should just take another job, build another.
Why didn't you at that point in time? Because I think a lot of people, they get down to that point,
AVS
$60
Media
in the
Demo.
bank account, knowing the resume can get them a job anywhere. What was it that you were just convinced of as to why you kept moving forward?
Well, the more we went on and the more people objected, I realized that their objections were not really
AVS
good
Media Demo.
objections and stuff, and that I would, I just became more and more convinced that I was right and they were wrong, and that this was just going to be finding the right place to bring this to, and we'll get it done. And that's literally what happened.
AVS
We spent
Media
3.5
Demo.
years of people telling us you're not Rupert Murdoch, and
Yeah.
then we finally found a venture capital group with vision. And
Who, and your partner, Alan, he was a real estate guy at the time. Was he fully dedicated in the Movie Time
AVS
as well? Or was he
Media
still
Demo.
working on the...
no, he came out here. He's
Okay.
from New Jersey.
Okay.
And together, he and I, we actually had a third partner at the beginning who, along the way, became a non-believer.
AVS
So kind of
Media
when you hit
Demo.
that 2-year period,
Yeah.
he's going like, "You guys are out of your mind. This is never going to happen. Why don't you just buy me out?" Which we did.
Yeah, with your $60.
Which just some crazy. I think he had like almost a
AVS
third of the
Media
company,
Demo.
and I think we bought it for like $20,000 or something. And then he sued us and told the judge that they should have told me
Oh, my
that this was
goodness.
going to be successful, and the judge threw it out
Yeah,
and
of
said,
course.
"Don't ever come back here."
Of course. Oh, my goodness.
AVS
So you finally,
Media
after 2
Demo.
years pitching and no
Three
luck,
and a half.
3.5 years of pitching, no one investing, you're down to your your $60. There's probably some doubt that's playing in your head, but you're still determined because you're just like, these guys are idiots. They don't know what they're talking about. This has got to
AVS
play out.
Media
I
Demo.
love that determination. You believed in it to the point of only sitting on $60. You pitch, and how did that first investment catapult Movie Time?
Yeah, it was. We were flying to New York for
AVS Media
a
Demo.
meeting with someone. We were kind of going over the business plan, and we're kind of going back and forth to make sure we both knew the numbers exactly the same way. And the guy sitting not far from us, said, "Oh, that sounds like a TV network. What are you guys doing?" And we told him.
AVS Media
And he
Demo.
says, "That's brilliant. When are you going to do it?" We said, "Well, we don't have any money." And the guy said, "Well, I'm in charge of acquisitions and divestitures for Warner Brothers." He goes, "I can't do a deal like that because you're a startup." But he says, "But I know of companies that would love
AVS
to hear this
Media
pitch."
Demo.
He goes, "It's a really good idea." And we were like, after 3.5 years of getting kicked over to
Yeah.
the curb,
Yeah.
we were like, "Yeah, okay, whatever, give us his name." So he gave us the name, and we called up and we went in to see. And it was funny because
AVS Media
was,
Demo.
an investment bank on Wall Street that had just, it was a bond house, I'm sorry, that had just started an investment banking division. So they
Okay.
really didn't have a lot of deals going.
Yeah.
And we walk in and we go into the guy's office. and
AVS
it's a young
Media
guy
Demo.
who had taken over the investment banking division. And we look on the wall and it's got movie posters on the wall. And Alan and I just looked at us and said, we said, "No, it can't be." And then he started telling us how he was the entertainment reporter
AVS
for his
Media
college
Demo.
newspaper and
Oh, wow.
stuff like that. And, at the end of the day, he said, "I really love this." He goes, "I'm not allowed to sign for $60 million, which is what it costs to start a TV network." he goes, I'm only allowed to sign for 2.5.
AVS Media Demo.
And we're going, but what are we going to do with 2.5? It requires 6. And MSNBC had just started up around then, or all the numbers were coming in at around 55 to 65 million. And he said, well, but I'm only allowed to sign for 2.5.
AVS Media
Finally, we
Demo.
just said, you know what? Give us 2.5. I said, we'll figure it out. And they did. You know, I give them credit for taking that leap of faith. And so with our $2.5 million, we went back to LA and started preparing to launch
AVS
this
Media
network. So I
Demo.
called a friend who worked at, who was teaching at University of Texas in Austin. And I said, I need, he was teaching radio, television, film. I said, do you have any kids who need intern jobs? And he said, yeah. He goes, I got a lot of them. It's hard to
AVS
find
Media
internships for
Demo.
these kids. I said, send them to LA.
Oh, that's awesome.
So we ended up with like 31 interns. We had 11 employees, 31 interns. With that, we figured out how to launch the channel. And it was interesting because the fact that we
AVS
didn't have
Media
money
Demo.
led us to a lot of innovation.
Yeah.
Like he was totally innovative when we started and stuff, and it was just because we had to be. I mean, we just didn't have the money.
Yeah.
So we were buying used industrial equipment that a company would use to make their in-house
AVS Media
training tapes.
Demo.
And then they graduated to real equipment. We would buy the old equipment, stuff like that. We built our first studio in a freight train rail station.
That's fantastic.
It was pretty crazy stuff.
So with your $2.5 million and your
AVS
30
Media
interns,
Demo.
obviously you had to adapt your business model that you had for 60 million. And I assume that when you took your $2.5 million investment, you said, this has got to get us to money at some point. We've
AVS
got to be
Media
able to
Demo.
launch and advertising or have sponsors or whatever the case may be. What adaptations did you make to your game and your launch plan to accommodate the reduced investment?
Yeah, we had always planned to be
AVS
call it
Media
Entertainment
Demo.
Tonight 24 hours a day. So in the original plan, there was lots of original programming and stuff like that. The cheapest part of our programming was taking these movie trailers, which we'd get from the studios for free, and having hosts kind of like the
AVS
video
Media
jockeys
Demo.
that MTV had, and having them introduce all these clips. So we came up with 10 different ways to have clip shows.
Okay.
And stuff, and just said, okay, all the original programming has to wait, and just put it all aside, and just went with
AVS
the most
Media
efficient,
Demo.
the most economical thing we could do. And as it turned out, people actually loved it because, you go to the movies and you're seeing the best 2 minutes of a movie. So that's the way we started, and that's the way we kept the cost down. But as soon as we went on
AVS
the air,
Media Demo.
we did a few things smart. We put the company in Hollywood, which, even though Hollywood is always considered the entertainment capital of the world, there was no TV station that came out of Hollywood.
Oh, wow.
So it was kind of
Is it all New
strange.
York or?
AVS
All New
Media
York or
Demo.
all Burbank or
okay.
Culver City or something.
Okay.
There was no TV station that came out of Hollywood. So we decided we're going to put the company in Hollywood, and then got all the Hollywood Chamber of Commerce and stuff to get behind us.
Yeah.
So when we did the launch,
AVS Media
we actually
Demo.
had Jack Valente, who was the head of the MPAA, the Motion Picture Association. He actually came and pulled the switch and did all of that, which brought a lot of attention to it. People going, Jack Valente's pulling the switch on a little cable network in
Yeah.
Hollywood.
AVS
What's
Media
that
Demo.
about? So we did that. We were very, very diligent on picking hosts. We realized that if we're not going to have money to make fabulous programming, we needed to have fabulous hosts. So we
AVS
I think we
Media
put-
Demo.
over 7,000 people on tape to pick the first 5 hosts
Oh my goodness.
and stuff. And it's funny because afterwards people say to us, they go, oh, you were so lucky you had those great hosts. We weren't lucky. We just realized what it was.
AVS Media
With
Demo.
limited money, what we had to focus on. And,
Can you, for those listening, I can only think of one of those hosts, but can you share those beginning hosts that you had?
Sure. Greg Kinnear,
huge name.
Julie Moran went on to do Wireless Sports
AVS
and
Media
Entertainment
Demo.
Yeah.
Mark DiCarlo went on to do Studs.
Oh yeah.
You had Richard Blade, K Rock, and and many things. You had Katie Wagner, Bob Wagner's daughter, who went on to do Lifestyles of the Original
AVS
Famous.
Media Demo.
And these were people that hadn't.
They had nothing. They were never on
before.
TV.
You just saw something in it, and you took
Sam Rubin, who's now
yeah.
the big, he's 20-something years the top entertainment reporter for news here in L.A.
Yep.
AVS
So we had
Media
Sam,
Demo.
and it was just, we picked well.
That is awesome. I mean, I remember Greg Kinnear and the early days. So it's interesting to see that, to know that he was picked out of 7,000 and had nothing, didn't have a pedigree before.
AVS Media
So you get
Demo.
your hosts. What were the early days of E like? The trying to get coverage and get a credibility within the industry.
We were pretty inventive. So we went, now I had come out of the cable world, so I knew a lot of the cable operators.
AVS
And,
Media
when I talk to them
Demo.
about it, they go, Larry, it sounds interesting, but, how do we know you're going to get the studios to give you the stuff that you're talking about? So I had met with this woman. Her name was T.G. Wilkerson Cassell. She owned the Hollywood Reporter
AVS
magazine,
Media
which at that
Demo.
time, trade magazines, Variety and Hollywood Reporter were it.
Yeah.
I mean, you woke up at 6 o'clock in the morning and you read those because you didn't want to go to work not knowing
Yeah.
what was in those things. And I talked to her, and she said, Larry, it's an interesting
AVS
idea.
Media Demo.
She says, but I'll give you, advertising in the paper and just give me some stock, She said, I just wish you luck. She was very supportive of entrepreneurship.
That's awesome.
And so we would go, and I would
AVS
talk
Media
to
Demo.
a studio. And the first studio who really came on a big way was Universal.
Okay.
And when we went over and they said, we don't think you're ever really going to be that big, but if you are, we want to hedge our bets. So they were giving us clips,
AVS
and
Media
helping
Demo.
us get interviews with stars and stuff like that. They kind of saw the vision. So we would take out an ad in the Hollywood Reporter saying, we'd like to thank Universal for coming on as our programming partner.
Oh, that's smart.
And then we would
AVS
just rip
Media
the pages
Demo.
out, and we'd send them to every cable operator in the country. And then I would call them and say, you didn't think we could do it, but here you go.
Yeah.
Universal is a partner. So I get a cable system to sign on. Then I do another ad and say, we'd like to thank Manhattan Cable
AVS
for joining
Media
our
Demo.
list of affiliates. And we'd rip that out, and then we'd send it to Disney, and then we'd send it to Paramount. And so we just literally
I love
kept
that
going back and
hustle.
forth.
I love that hustle. That is outstanding. Again, and then what I love, hearing this story, I just
AVS
love that
Media Demo.
you wanted 60 million, you got 2.5, and you still you made it happen, and you were just inventive and innovative with that. I love that.
and like I say, it really did, the fact that it forced us into innovation.
Yeah.
I mean, we
AVS
just didn't have a
Media
choice. I mean,
Demo.
our first voiceover booth, and Greg Kinnear, with Greg and stuff, it was literally a closet in a conference room. The hosts were like, really? I got to go do my voiceovers in a closet? But it gave it
AVS
this
Media
very
Demo.
pirate look.
Yeah.
It was clearly different than anything you've ever seen. And because we didn't have enough money to retape things, a lot of times you'd see a host make a mistake, and we would just keep rolling tape, which we used to do with Greg
AVS
all the
Media
time.
Demo.
But then girls started going, oh, he's so cute when he makes mistakes. We love when he raises his eyebrows. And, we're going, geez, it's amazing what's, happened. And, Greg blew up. And Julie Moran. And, they all did really well.
When
AVS
did you
Media
know?
Demo.
I mean, obviously, we know the story of E now. I don't think everyone knows that it sold at some point in time for $3 billion, I think it was. So I don't know if everyone knows that, but you can Google it, you can find the stats on it. But
AVS
when did you
Media
know?
Demo.
You're recording in a closet. At what point, what event happened where you said, now we've got this? Like, I know this is going to succeed.
The day that Jack Palante pulled the switch. When we got that far, when he pulled that
AVS
switch,
Media
I just kind
Demo.
of went, "Phew, we did it." But, the person next to me says, no, Larry, you don't understand. You spent the last 6 months building up to this point, literally working 16-hour days. He goes, now think you got to do this every day for the rest of your life.
AVS
With a TV
Media
network, it's
Demo.
funny because it's never off. It's
Yeah.
on 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And running one is kind of interesting because even though you're in charge of the product, you never really get to see all the product because you can't.
Oh, that's a great point.
AVS Media Demo.
So you really had to build a management team
Yeah.
that you could trust, that I could go to sleep at night knowing that they were going to do things the right way and
Yeah.
stuff like that, because you couldn't see what they were doing.
So knowing that your initial vision for E was to have
AVS
a lot
Media
of
Demo.
original content, when did that, in the E life cycle, when did that start happening?
It started after about 2 years. We started doing covering things like the Academy Award entrance, not the awards
AVS
themselves, but
Media
the
Demo.
entrances, getting on the carpet.
Were
which-
you invited with open arms to those events?
No, we weren't. As a matter of fact, the first one we ever did was at the Shrine Center, and we literally climbed over the fence. we had an entire camera
AVS
crew. We
Media
climbed over one of
Demo.
the back fences, and we had no credentials, nothing. But we got great things, and again, being the first one from Hollywood, like a lot of people in the business started looking at us and saying, this is actually kind of cool.
AVS
Because we were
Media
covering parts
Demo.
of the business that were never covered. I
Yeah.
mean, people would fight for their 20 seconds on Entertainment Tonight. And here, we were willing to do a 30-minute show on the making of a movie. And, movie trailers was never
AVS
really an
Media
art.
Demo.
A lot of people understood until we came around and made it that.
That's incredible. So within the store, you started making your own content. Was Talk Soup your first original piece?
Talk Soup was the first original,
AVS
and again,
Media
out of
Demo.
necessity, because we could get the clips. Again,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they, from the Jerry Springer show and all that. And, Greg was fabulous. Greg Kinnear was the
Yeah.
first host, and he was fabulous. It was an easy show for us to do, very
AVS
economical.
Media Demo.
But it was interesting because when we did it, and originally it was actually going to be called Talk Soap. We were thinking of doing a TV show for women who love soap operas that work, and they get home at 7 o'clock at night and they don't know what happened on their
AVS
favorite soap
Media
operas.
Demo.
But we couldn't clear the clips.
Okay.
So we said, let's call Jerry Springer. And, they were more than happy to give us the clip. So
Yeah.
when people heard, they said, Larry, we think you lost your mind. They go, why? They go, you want to do a TV
AVS
show that
Media
makes fun
Demo.
of TV shows. And I was like, exactly. And they were like, okay, whatever. But as soon as you went on, Greg was just so fabulous.
Yeah.
You had to love that show. And again, it
That
was,
was a
very
great
pirate.
show. That was a great show.
Yeah. And it ran 25
AVS
years.
Media Demo.
Unbelievable. I mean, I can't think. I can think of two hosts. Obviously, Greg Kinnear and then Joel McHale. Those are the two that resonate with my lifespan. So, what an incredible show. How old was E when acquisition conversations
AVS
were
Media
being
Demo.
made?
About 2 or 3 days. As soon as it went on the air, people came to us and
really?
said, oh, yeah.
Oh, wow.
They said, well, why didn't you tell us that's what you wanted to do? We would have given you that money 3 years ago. So it was
AVS
just one of those
Media
things that
Demo.
as soon as you saw it, you
Yeah.
just had to hit yourself in the head and go, oh, my God, of course. And again, you had all the stats saying, that the entertainment pages were
Yeah.
the second most popular in any Sunday newspaper and stuff. And here you had it. the video
AVS
version.
Media
Let's ask a
Demo.
couple retrospective questions. What do you say to those who hear the E story, your journey, and say, well, it was just all perfect timing. Like that can never happen today.
I think you see it happen time and
AVS
time again
Media
today.
Demo.
I mean, the world is much more open. Then you needed, to start a media venture, of that size and scale, you needed $60 million. I mean, now I could literally do it on a laptop.
Yeah.
The barriers to entry are way
AVS
down.
Media Demo.
When I first started getting into business, video was 2-inch tape and giant machines that cost $2 million each and stuff like that. We just watched it come down. I mean, now you can record an unbelievable
AVS
video
Media
on your
Demo.
iPhone.
Isn't that crazy?
It's actually much easier now to be creative and inventive and be much more catering to consumer needs.
Yeah. So if you were to start now, I know you have a current venture,
AVS
Meitan,
Media
which
Demo.
is content in China, right? But if you were to do this again in the States, what steps would you take differently?
So, well, first, I wouldn't do linear television.
AVS Media
Explain
demo.
linear television. For
Linear
those listening.
television is the old style TV networks like NBC, ABC,
Got it,
CBS,
okay.
where, tune in Thursday night at 9 o'clock and we have whatever.
Got it.
If you want to watch Seinfeld, you had to watch it when NBC wanted to watch it. not when
AVS
you wanted to
Media
watch it.
demo.
I've always kind of been thinking forward, like how technology fundamentally
Yeah.
changes the business and stuff. And, to me, when all this digital technology came around, you could look at storage. As storage gets bigger, bigger, bigger,
AVS
cheaper,
Media
cheaper,
demo.
cheaper.
Yeah.
Just say, and it will continue. So you just kind of play it out. You say, what happens when it gets real big and real cheap? You say, then you have the ability to have, things in your home that, allow you to
AVS
record and
Media
store
demo.
and then watch things when you want. And then you say, okay, when you get really big, you could have things in the cloud, or it wasn't called the cloud then, that every program ever made could be stored somewhere and called up when someone wants to watch it. The
AVS
changes
Media
are,
demo.
amazing. I mean, thinking of networks as brands disappears. I mean, I don't go home to watch NBC. I go home to watch certain programs and stuff. So I would not do anything linear. Again, simple thing.
AVS
Do you want to
Media
watch
demo.
what you want to watch when you want to watch it, or do you want to watch when NBC wants you to watch when they want you to watch it?
I want
we
what I
all know
want.
we
Yeah.
all know the answer to the question. Now you spread that out and you say, now beyond being able to watch it on time, you could watch it on the device you
AVS
want.
Media
I mean,
demo.
I could watch a program on this big TV here, and then I could leave the house and, sitting on an airplane, see the end of the movie on my cell phone or my pad or whatever. So, that's
AVS
a major
Media demo.
change. It's putting back control in the hands of the consumer, which means you better be good. I mean, they're not forced to watch your stuff anymore. It better be good stuff.
Yeah.
So it's really forced the elevation of quality. I think it's forced the elevation of the quality of
AVS Media
what's
demo.
out there and stuff. I mean, today there's so many platforms that are doing incredible stuff in the visual entertainment. I don't even call it film or television. It's visual entertainment because I don't think it makes any difference what you watch it on.
AVS
as long
Media
as you get to
demo.
watch what you want.
Looking back on your journey, I'm a big believer in mentorship. Like, I just think, the entrepreneurial journey, people say is lonely, and it can be lonely, but it doesn't have to be. And I think part of why it's lonely is we get
AVS
so
Media
focused
demo.
on the tasks that have to be accomplished in order to grow a business, whatever the business is. And looking back on your journey through Mayton, all the other ventures you've had in between, are there people that you point to as your mentors?
Yeah, there
AVS
are.
Media
When I
demo.
worked at Manhattan Cable, I reported to then Vice President of Operations, who moved higher, then a guy named Frank Ciano. Frank had a similar background to me. Kind of came from a very modest family and stuff, and
AVS
just
Media
worked really
demo.
hard and stuff. It was tough as hell when he needed to be. So I learned an amazing amount from him. And then when all the Time Inkers kind of took over and I became closer, I discovered them and they discovered me.
AVS Media
So
demo.
probably the most is a guy named Nick Nicholas. Nick came in from Time Inc. to be the president of Manhattan Cable with the job to grow the business.
Okay.
I mean, so he was really there in the growth mode. Frank was more in the let's maintain the
AVS
customer mode.
Media demo.
So I learned a lot from Nick, and Nick eventually went on to become the president of Time Warner. And but I was there through the beginning of HBO with Jerry Levin and the video group. I was part of that growth with
AVS Media
the guy
demo.
who ran it was a guy named Dick Monroe. So those are all the guys who kind of set the tone for me, which was great because then I had this entrepreneurial spirit, but yet I had corporate discipline.
Yeah.
And I knew the way those guys thought and how they played the game. And I also
AVS
understood
Media
very
demo.
clearly the timing involved in what they had to do versus the timing involved in what I had to do. So that's why a lot of the stuff I did, I went in very confidently is, because I could say, I know how to play that game, but I could play it a lot faster than they can.
AVS Media
Because I didn't
demo.
have boards of directors to go through and shareholders and, writing reports. If I felt something was good, I could just pull the trigger and do it. And that's what let E become, a lot of it was improvised. I mean, a lot of it we didn't really go out there
AVS
knowing, but
Media
somebody comes to
Demo.
us with an opportunity and we go, sure. You know, when the Wayans brothers first started on trying to get on television, we let them host. You know, they would walk in and say, hey, we have nothing to do. We go, here, you know, here's a microphone.
That's
you could be the host of the
fantastic.
next
AVS
hour.
Media
Paula
Demo.
Abdul and stuff. So we kind of became almost a clubhouse for Hollywood. It was just a comfortable place to
Yeah.
go and hang out. And if we felt like doing something, I mean, one day we had Jack Lemmon. We brought a piano on the set and we had
AVS
Jack Lemmon play
Media
the piano.
Demo.
Instead of
That's
doing an interview
incredible.
because he didn't like doing interviews. And then every agent in town was like, how did you get Jack Lemmon to come on? He doesn't do that.
That
And
is
we go,
so
we
cool.
just let him do what he wanted to do, not what we wanted him to do.
So I have to ask a question. I
AVS
did not
Media
intend on
Demo.
asking until you brought up Jack Lemmon's story. When you look back at your career at E, specifically E, what is one, would it be an interview, that one moment that you look back on, and that is your fondest memory of that period?
AVS Media
Well, I mean, the
Demo.
launch, obviously. But, you know, after we were going and I got a call from Warner Brothers. Well, the two. One is I got a call from Warner Brothers, you know, which was kind of, wow, Warner Brothers calling me, asking me if they could borrow
AVS
Greg
Media
Kinnear
Demo.
to do a pilot of a TV show.
Oh,
And
wow.
you know, and of course I agreed. There was something called College Funhouse, and it just had a very short run. But you know, going, wow, that's really weird that you know Warner Brothers calling me
AVS
borrow some
Media
of our
Demo.
people. The other was we had the last studio to kind of sign on with us was Paramount. And no matter what we would do, they wouldn't give us clips. They wouldn't advertise with us. They wouldn't do anything. So when we used to do
AVS
the movie
Media Demo.
countdown, you know, whether it be Greg Kinnear or DeCarlo or whatever, we go, and the number 10 movie for last week was blah, blah, blah on Disney, and the number 9 was blah, blah, blah from Columbia, and the number 8 was, oh, some studio starts with a P, don't even bother with that one.
AVS Media Demo.
I had a friend at Paramount who told me that the president of Paramount literally came down to the marketing department and screamed at them going, I don't know who this company is, I don't know what, but I don't want to hear this anymore. You figure out a way to work with those guys. And we started working with Paramount right
AVS
after that.
Media
One
Demo.
of the things that I love about the E story is that 2.5 year mark. One of your partners wants out. You're down to your last $60. You know, one of the personas of the listeners might just be that entrepreneur that just
AVS
isn't getting
Media
traction
Demo.
and isn't sure if it's time to call it quits or not. What do you say to that person in that journey?
Well, I mean, number one, you got to do a real honest assessment there. You know, you can't let your emotions get in the way of really figuring out, you know,
AVS Media Demo.
was this a good idea to begin with? Is it still a good idea? Sometimes time just passes you by, and, you know, well, was a good idea 2 years ago, may not be. But a lot of people hang on to those way too long. And I think that's the downfall of a lot of people is they just hang on
AVS
to
Media
an
Demo.
idea who might have started out well, but now technology is kind of past it and stuff. So number one is make that honest assessment, and if you're so convinced, you know, just hang on to your dreams.
AVS Media Demo.
If you really believe in it, you got to go for it.
Yeah. Or evolve, right? I mean, evolve
Yeah,
with
or
it. I mean, if you're so
evolve it.
passionate about it, it's like, what is that next? What is that evolution of whatever your initiative
And it
is?
all
Yeah.
evolves. I mean, even when you take E, we started out one way.
AVS
and, you know,
Media
then,
Demo.
you know, obviously we went into, you know, the Howard Stern show and E! Hollywood True Story, and, you know, so yeah, it's a progression. I mean, you look now at any TV, you look at CBS and you say, you know,
AVS
is
Media
it what
Demo.
Bill Pelly envisioned in, you know, 1940 something? And the answer is no, it evolved, but it's still his baby.
Yeah. I'm a big fan of reading, and I always want to ask the question, what books have helped shape you?
There was a book, well, one of the
AVS
most,
Media Demo.
Juan Enriquez, was called As the Future Catches You. And it was just really focused on thinking about the what can be versus the what is. And it's just
That's
a way of
interesting.
thinking.
Yeah.
Those who have noticed my Bruce Lee books.
AVS Media Demo.
Bruce was much more than a fighter. Bruce was a philosopher. And he was really into be the best. Don't try and be someone else and stuff like that. Be the best you can be. And it really convinced me I didn't have to be Rupert Murdoch.
Yeah.
AVS
I could
Media
be
Demo.
me and be successful in my way. I didn't have to be in someone else's.
Was that something that was constantly present in your mind as you were building E? Was that I've got to beat Rupert Murdoch?
Well, that was what other people expected, and
Yeah.
unfortunately,
AVS
it's
Media
when people
Demo.
meet me, a lot of them are taken back because they expect me to be that. They go, oh, he started TV networks, he's a mogul, and I listen to some of the descriptions, and I go, and then they realize I'm
AVS
still,
Media Demo.
the son of a Pepsi Cola driver from Brooklyn, and I don't live in giant mansions and fly in private planes and stuff. I like my quiet, I like my privacy.
Yeah.
I want my kids to grow up with values and
AVS
stuff like that.
Media
So I
Demo.
kind of, so while he obviously is huge, I kind of carefully moderate that whole thing.
That's incredible. And Larry, I really do appreciate you affording me this opportunity for the Startup Story podcast, but all the other times you've
AVS
given me,
Media Demo.
your time to share the story. I learn from you each and every time. I know our listeners have probably learned a tremendous amount as well. It is incredible to just get your perspective with all your experience. So thank you so very much.
Well, so sometimes it's fun to think back on some of
AVS
those funny
Media Demo.
experiences. So thank you.
Over the last year, I have had the good fortune of meeting with Larry a few times for various reasons, and every single time I learned something new from him. His experience gives me a perspective I did not have.
AVS Media Demo.
One of the narratives that I shake my head at is when I hear people talking about the days of old or the golden era that will never happen again. You hear people talk about how they missed the dot-com boom in the mid to late 90s or the mobile app blitz of the mid 2000s.
AVS
Hearing
Media
from
Demo.
Larry how much easier it would be today to start a media network tells me that the best opportunities are still ahead of us. Think about what he said regarding the ability to record from your mobile phone versus needing to obtain expensive commercial-grade video equipment,
AVS
like he
Media
had to when
Demo.
he started E, or being able to leverage platforms like YouTube or IGTV to create a viewership as opposed to being dependent on cable distribution. Don't believe the false narrative that all the great ideas or opportunities have passed.
AVS
Now
Media
is the
Demo.
time to move on your idea. Larry is still moving on new ideas that he has. Aside from his company, Meitan Global, that content producer in mainland China, he has a startup called Yuzzle. That's YUZZL.
AVS Media Demo.
It's a platform that started by merchandising some hilarious tweets from our president and has since grown to allow other brands to establish their own storefront. I believe in entrepreneurs helping other entrepreneurs. So please check out Yuzzle.com. Again,
AVS Media
YUZZL.com to see if there's a way to support a fellow entrepreneur. Now, here's my personal ask from one founder to another. The startup story itself is a startup, and we would love to hear your story and possibly share your startup story.
AVS Media
Please connect with
Demo.
us on Facebook or Instagram at thestartupstory.co. Mention us, comment on a post, or DM us, or visit our website at thestartupstory.co to connect with us. Make sure to subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, or wherever you
AVS
get your
Media
podcasts.
Demo.
Please leave a 5-star review. They really do matter on the platform algorithms. Share the startup story with a friend. The startup story is for entrepreneurs, so please do not underestimate the power of sharing the startup story on your LinkedIn profile so
AVS
other
Media
entrepreneurs can
Demo.
discover us. Every single founder has a story, and the startup stories we will be bringing to you every week can encourage and inspire another founder. It might just be what they need to hear to keep moving forward on their dreams. I look forward to sharing these
AVS
stories
Media
every
Demo.
Tuesday with hopes to inspire you to start your story.
AVS Media Demo.